Hey there, Robert John Hadfield here at the Utah South Studios, and we got to talk about this whole Doc McGhee, Paul Stanley lip syncing thing. But before we do, I want to remind you about Audio Mover. It's the company that takes your old audio and videotapes and converts them to digital. So if you have old audio and videotapes, and you probably do, go to audiomover.com, start an order, and get your audio and videotapes converted to digital for a permanent archive. So a lot of you might have seen this, and this has been an issue for a little while. People have been talking about accusing Paul Stanley of lip syncing, and it's been a big thing because people will catch these little moments in concerts where there'll be a skip or something. There was one that came out not long ago, and it was pretty obvious that there was something not right about this. That he had been that they were playing to a track. And so, but Paul Stanley has been so adamant about this, that everything's live, that we're not playing to tracks, that he's not lip syncing, that anyway, it's just become one of these things because he denies it so much. We're all paying attention to it now, at least those of us that pay attention to things like this. Anyway, so I'm scrolling through my news feed a couple days ago, and I see this thing that pops up that says something like KISS manager Doc McGhee admits that Paul Stanley sings to tracks. And I go, what? So I click on this and I thought, you gotta be kidding me. And what happened, I went and watched the video. And so there's this guy that it's like he has a Twitter account or something. And all he really is doing, it's an account that he calls Syncing Stanley. And he's basically just trying to troll Paul Stanley. I mean, that's really all this is. And somehow, it wasn't like he got Doc McGhee to do a real formal interview with him. When I watched the video, it looks like he caught him at a convention or something. He's like in a room or a hallway, or like he's in the middle of going somewhere, and then this guy caught him and got him to talk for a second. And he said something to him about, when is Paul Stanley going to admit that he sings to tracks? And Doc McGhee literally says that Paul Stanley sings to tracks. Right there, he said it to him. But he said that it was, he doesn't say that he's lip syncing. He says that he's singing to tracks, and he's doing it so that people have the sound that they expect. They have basically a quality show, and hear the thing that they expect to hear from a singer. And which honestly isn't ridiculous. I mean, you'd be surprised how many people do this, not just in a studio, do this live. I mean, Ozzy has done this. Like, he'll have a guy that sounds kind of like him that's backstage, no joke. They've got a sound booth, and he'll sit there and sing the song while Ozzy's singing on stage, and you're not really sure if you're hearing Ozzy or if you're hearing the dude backstage. So this is not crazy. This is not a weird thing. And of course, in recording studios, people do this all the time. I mean, I've been in recording studios my whole life. I own a recording studio, for heaven's sake. So I know, I've seen how this stuff is done. And a lot of times people will double track their voice. They'll record their voice. And one of the classic things people do is they'll record something all the way through, and then they'll record it again on top of itself, and then they'll pan it. So one goes to the left speaker, one goes to the right, and it actually makes your voice sound bigger because it adds this stereo imagery. And the slight imperfection in the two vocal performances, even though you're singing exactly the same way, you're human and it's going to vary just a little bit, actually creates this incredible stereo imagery, and it makes your voice sound huge. So it's not a good example where you can hear double tracking. One that's more obvious than most have ever heard is Been Caught Stealin' by Jane's Addiction. Go find that and just listen to Perry Farrell. And if you just listen to him singing, you can tell they didn't go out of their way to get rid of all the little imperfections, but you can hear that his voice is recorded on top of his voice. And I'm not talking about harmonies. There are harmonies in there too, where where he changes notes to get that harmony. I'm talking about the parts where he's just singing on top of himself. So it's not a far-fetched thing. It's not an unusual thing in a studio, or even for people to do it live, to sing on top of themselves to enhance the voice. For an interesting example of this, Brad Delp on one of the last tours he did. Well, I don't know if it was one of the last tours before he committed suicide, but this would have been in the mid-90s. They literally had a guy on stage singing along with him because he couldn't hit the notes. And Brad even said that in the microphone. And he was very just humble about it. And he basically, Brad Delp said, I'm an older guy. I can't sing the notes I used to be able to sing. So I've got, Bob or whatever his name was over here, and he's going to help me reach those high notes tonight. And no, everyone's cool with it. It was actually this kind of a beautiful moment. Like, you know what? I came here to sing for you guys. I want this to be great. I'm here. I'm going to do everything I possibly can. But, you got to realize I'm not what I used to be. So we're going to amp it up a little bit just so it sounds right. And everybody just gives deference, and we just love it and we go with it. But unfortunately, Paul Stanley has just been, and maybe, when you look, I don't want to say anything bad about Paul Stanley as a person, because I'm a huge fan of Paul Stanley in multiple levels. I met him once and have a really, truly kind of touching, beautiful personal experience that came from meeting him that I'll have to tell another time. But it was, he's in many ways a really beautiful guy. I love Paul Stanley. So I'm not trying to disparage him. I think nothing but, I think very highly of him. And his book was so powerful. Learning about the ear thing that I didn't ever even know about, just gave me this whole new perspective on who this guy was. But I think, not to be an armchair psychologist, but he somehow, I think he's still carried some of that insecurity over, even though he's this huge rock star, and just hates the idea that he has to have a crutch, and doesn't even want to admit that he has to have a crutch. I get, for a lot of people that's true. You get older and you don't want to admit that you can't do the things you used to be able to do. It sucks. Nobody likes it. I'm in my 50s now, and you have those things like, man, and you're trying to, but you realize it's the way these things go. So, but he was so adamant. He's been so adamant about, I don't sing to tracks. This is all live. And it seems like he wears it like a badge on his sleeve, and because of that, you make yourself more vulnerable if you even mess it up just a tiny bit. If you're even doing it just a little bit at that point, the world gets very unforgiving. It's like a preacher, preaching that you need to live a certain way, and I live this way, and being way too pure, and then finding out, well, the guy's not really that pure. It makes it worse than if he would have just always admitted that he just wasn't perfect. Then we don't care as much. So he kind of, I hate to say this, but he set himself up for this, which makes me sick. I hate that. So, but what was so amazing is, so this guy catches Doc McGhee walking through I don't know where he was, but it looked like he was walking through the hall or walking at a convention or something, and he makes his comment. And then Doc McGhee says, well, yeah, he sings to tracks. And then all of a sudden you go, you got to be kidding me. I can't believe, and I'm imagining, although I don't know, I doubt Paul told him to go. That's the first thing came to my mind. Did Paul tell him to go say this to somebody, to give him permission to say this? Because I can't even imagine that Paul would support something like that, that he'd tell him to say something like that. It just was amazing to me to think about this. So anyway, he tells him that, and so now we've got this whole issue of Paul Stanley really truly is singing to tracks. And but he's not lip syncing, which may be the case, but of course he's not lip syncing. Whenever you have shows like this, I mean, look, there are times where you're literally lip syncing. I mean, you'll see footage. I wish I could think of a great example right now, but there are times you'd see KISS on TV shows. Most bands, when they've been on TV shows, they're literally lip syncing, literally like they're not playing their instruments. Nothing's even plugged in. And they play the recording from the studio or the original album over the speakers, and they're sitting there lip syncing and pretending to play it. And that's why the fade out at the end of the song is even there, because you don't really play a fade out. But all of that stuff is in when you're really, really, really lip syncing. But in a live setting like this, you're not really lip syncing. And I don't know that anybody ever super accuses you of like 100% lip syncing, because you don't ever really turn off the microphone in those settings. Because how do you think that he yells in the middle of the songs? How do you think in the middle of the tune when the guitar solo happens and he's saying, all right, and he yells somebody else's name, or he says, all right, everybody put your hands together. Where do you think that comes from? He's yelling that into the microphone right then. That's why it looks like he's yelling it into the microphone right then. But the rest of the song, in the vocal parts, they probably do. And what, it could have been so easy for Paul to do something like Brad Delp did. I mean, he could have done it at a press conference and said, hey, before the tour started, look, I'm getting to be an old man. And before the tour started, we went into a studio and I nailed every one of these parts so that we would have it. And then what we do when we play, just like almost every other band in the world today does, we take some of the things that we can't reproduce live, and we have Eric Singer's playing to a click track in the back, and some of those things come through to enhance the music. And in its own way, it's an instrument. It's hard to think of it that way, but the skill that somebody like Eric Singer has to have to stay on top of those beats, it sounds easier than it really is for somebody to really, really stay right on with that track. And then, there's all kinds of new technology that helps it all kind of stay together and helps the drummer and whatever. But the point is, this isn't unusual. A lot of people really do play to tracks, but they don't lip sync. And so what Doc McGhee said is he's always singing. We just have tracks in the back that enhance his voice. And I think, isn't that kind of probably what all of us expected? I don't know that anybody expected he was completely lip syncing. I'd imagine we have the Paul Stanley recorded voice in the background, and Paul Stanley sings over the top of it. And if he's having a particularly rough night, then we turn up the Paul Stanley recorded voice a little bit, but we still hear Paul. And we're still all there in the same room, having a great time together. And it's just the way, it's one of the beauties of technology, is it allows us to do things like this. So, once again, and probably there's so many little things that could make this, because Paul's kind of a sensitive dude a little bit, and it goes back to so many parts about his life, and read his book if you haven't read it. It's actually an interesting book. But so this makes him extra sensitive to stuff like this, and especially then you add on the fact that for all those years, you had rumors, and I remember this stuff when I was younger, the rumors that, Ace Frehley didn't even play on the album, and the guys don't even play. And, as kids were all like, no, of course he played in the album. Of course he did. He didn't. And then you find out later that, he probably didn't really. And then all these other things that he's had to contend with over the years, like they record Alive. And then, did you do overdubs on Alive? Did you take it into the studio and do overdubs? No, we didn't do overdubs. No, we don't do it. And then we find out later, yeah, we did overdubs. And they enhanced it a lot. They enhanced the crowd noises, and they went in, and guess what? Everybody does it, but Paul and the band KISS has kind of worn it like a badge on their sleeve that they don't, which is kind of unfortunate, because all you have to do is just say it in the first place, and nobody really cares. That's the sad part about it. Look, I've said it before. And I'm a big KISS fan, and I don't want to see any of these guys look foolish, least of all Paul, who from my childhood was like my idol. When I was with all my friends and we would play KISS, we'd grab tennis rackets and go into one of our friends' basement and play along to Alive 2, and pretend that we were the guys in KISS. Put on, a lot of the people watching this video probably did the same thing. We loved KISS, and this was so they've been a part of our lives for a long, long time. I don't want to say we actually don't want to, watching everybody age just kind of sucks. I mean, let's be honest, it's not a pretty thing. to get older. We can do it gracefully, but then when you're in the public eye like that, then it becomes something where more people talk about it, and then you see things like. I put out a video a couple days ago about one of Madonna's old, because I found a blue vinyl thing of Madonna. But I mean, think about her. She showed up at, what was it, the Grammys about a week ago, and it's all anybody can talk about. I mean, you see it everywhere, whether you want to or not, because she's Madonna, and because clearly she doesn't look like she should at that age, and she also doesn't look very good. And so it's a tough thing for everybody to have to deal with, and admitting, man, I need help is not an easy thing for anybody in any circumstance. Really, it's kind of tough, and it's one of these things to watch that and to see that Paul's that now we're looking at this, and I'm just imagining Paul Stanley finds out, unless he told him to go do it, he finds out that Doc McGhee, who's been their manager for a long, long time, went out and actually told the world that Paul is singing to tracks. Probably wasn't his favorite thing to hear. Like I said, I doubt that Paul sanctioned it or wanted him to go talk about this. So anyway, really, really fascinating thing, and it's who cares? I mean, it's funny every time I talk about KISS, and you especially watch some of our videos on TikTok and thing, and you just get the chorus of KISS sucks, and this kind of thing doesn't help that much. But look, I'm a big KISS fan. I love their music. I love the masquerade. The whole thing that went along with them. I thought it was spectacular. And look, you can knock these guys all you want to, that it was all gimmicky. And you know what? Yeah, it was. There's a lot of gimmicky stuff in it, just like showbiz in general. I mean, just about everything that happens, there's some sort of gimmick, marketing-related thing behind it all the time. And so, there's been a lot of bands over the years that have had gimmicks, and not many of them have stuck around for 50 years. And the truth is, like it or not, they had catchy music, and people could sing along with it. People enjoyed it, and then you add the big, powerful show, and you put all this stuff together, and it's a winning combination. And you don't have to like them. You don't have to think they're good musicians. They're not. They're okay. But together they had some cool stuff. They made some good music, and there's a lot of us out there, clearly millions, that really liked what they did. And so we don't want to see this. Honestly, we don't want to see this stuff. And it's unfortunate now, for those of us that are big KISS fans, to to watch. It makes you feel kind of sick, and that's why I'm talking about it now, because you feel a little bit sick, like, oh, geez, this could have been avoided if we just would have just, from the beginning, just said, yeah, well, let's kind of have to do a little bit of this. It's not that much, but we throw a little in there to make it sound a little bit better. We're all about making sure that, it's funny because that's the whole thing. I mean, think about this. They replaced Ace and Peter. They replaced Ace and Peter with other players because Ace and Peter couldn't cut it. They've said that over and over and over again. They were giving you a better show by taking the people that you actually want to see out of the show. You're getting a better show. How is this different? We're taking my voice out of the show and bringing in a substitute so you have a better show. It's the same principle. Could have said that so easily. But we got adamant about it and dug heels in that we don't do this kind of thing, and then you get caught, and then you go, well, and now I don't know what do you say at this point, but like I said, they've already, well, whatever. I like KISS. I'm not a fan. I am not a fan. I've said this before, of the whole Tommy Thayer, Eric Singer thing. But look, that's what they do. And they still sell a lot of tickets. And they're doing their farewell tour for the next 8 years, I think. I think I saw them on the farewell tour 7 years ago. I don't know. I've seen them a few times. And I really like them. And I wish them the best. And I don't want, but this was just kind of a weird thing, especially for those of us in the KISS fan camp, to see this kind of thing come out, have Doc McGhee in the middle of it, and have that. So anyway, strange stuff. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget Audio Mover, audiomover.com. If you have old audio and videotapes that you need to convert to digital, or if you know somebody that has some, let them know about Audio Mover. Go to audiomover.com, and you can get an order started there converting your old audio and videotapes to digital. Anyway, with that, have a fantastic day.